Hi, welcome to the Let's Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. If there's one thing that can get in the way of your life, nobody can get in the way of your life like you. You become your own mountain, and you can easily spiral into this victim, oh my, oh me. So I found Mr. Kyle Smith because this is the realm that he deals in. He found himself in that kind of situation, and most people just try to snap out of it. Very few people come out with a way to help humanity out of it, and Kyle did. So Kyle, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing very well today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, my friend. I saw it. I was like, you know what? This is so interesting. This guy looks like he is really doing stuff with life. So what's your story? How did this all come about? And then we'll go into what is an NLSE consultant. we'll
Yeah,
talk
fair.
about that. But let's go into you.
So, what I do now is a side effect of me turning my problems into my passions, to being a problem solver. And it started in 2016 when I had a very solid pivot point where I wanted to better myself. I didn't like the person I was. I didn't have much respect. I didn't like the character I was embodying. So then I went through the last 9 years of exploring different tools, different practices, and coming upon the two that have been the most powerful for me because they're simple. It works in a short period of time and it's high leverage. So you do a little and you get a lot. And I wanted to be able to do something when I was away. I didn't want to be dependent on an external source like a counselor or a therapist. I wanted to be able to maintain my own internal dialogue.
What I've seen, and I'm sorry to interrupt, brother, but when you're dealing with depression and anxiety and stuff like that, that many people in the United States dealing and increasing them, there's a moment that you hit there's a moment that you hit, and I don't know if it's for everybody, but that's that enough, I have to change moment. What was that moment for you?
I found myself with everything being out in the open after being unfaithful and deceptive. Everything came out in the open. And so everyone that was involved, everything was clear. And by clear, I mean it was out in the open. There was a lot of hurt feels. And from there, so there's two things that I look at now. And there's either by choice or by chance.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us to get to a particular problem, we're allowing it to happen by chance. Now, I make decisions much earlier on to have preventative, downstream effects or prevent negative downstream effects. And so by choice, I'm choosing to solve problems now so I don't have to learn the mistakes or experience the mistakes later. So at that point in time, I let things happen by chance. I was not taking it as seriously, and I just let things happen as they did.
When your stuff is laid bare out there, that is a very horrible, horrible situation to be in. I think if you've had any life, you've ran into that. Everything got laid bare in front of you and you just had to deal with it. But some people wallow in stuff, and then it turns into a victim mentality, getting trapped in it. So talk to me about that and how you're working to get away from those things.
For sure. The way that I am working to get away from those things, and I'll say maintaining my distance from them. Because I think that the worse we feel about ourselves, the further we're off track. And I start with the definition as a reference point so that there's something to contrast behavior with. So I define the victim mentality as an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. And the victim mentality is different than the victim because the victim, it happens in the experience, the moment of, in that moment.
Right.
Past that, decades later, If the evidence is not there showing that they are the exact same victim from the same experience in that moment, then that's a prolonged story. It's a prolonged narrative. It's something that we haven't integrated, we haven't processed, and it's still lingering in our emotional body, in our feels.
Wow. We can shape a whole life with. You could get stuck into just a rut. Like you can feed off that fuel of victim mentality for a very long time. Oh me, oh my, I've done it. I've known people who have done it.
I've certainly done it.
And out of that, you decided you wanted to help and you wanted to do something. So there was something that really got me when I looked at you. I said, clarity consultant. What the heck is a clarity consultant? So can you talk about that, and then we'll get into what you developed?
Clarity consultant, breaking it down, I help guide, consult people to clarity. And clarity to me, in the way that I've experienced it and the way that I teach it, is that it's not a layering on of stuff, it's a decluttering of stuff, and then using words like Lego blocks to piece the stories together or experiences, and then be able to change your state based off of the story.
Wow. Using the story to change it up. One of the things that when they're dealing with PTSD in veterans, that's one way that there's many ways that came out since I came back. There's the different CBTs and all these different stuff in the psychological world, but telling your story and telling it like a story is a way to heal. It's one of those ways that I was taught by the many psychs. So I like that you're going in that, but it shows the power of words.
Oh yeah.
The power of words in your life, because in that story, those words are life changing. So tell me about that. And then tell me what is NLSC and how does it work?
Something I also wanted, the power of words, is the word abracadabra. Very magical word. People think pulling rabbits out of hats. Some people will think Pokemon. Some people will think Steve Miller Band. And what abracadabra is old language. It's Aramaic, about 3,000 years old. And translated to English, it's with my words I create. And so if we look together at a definition of a spell, going with the magic theme, spells are a word or a collection of words of great influence. So we spell together words that are of great influence on our internal environment and our external environment. How we perceive ourselves, how we perceive everything outside of us.
And how does that incorporate all this?
So NLSC is broken into two different tools, story work and breath work. So something that my practice differs from other head-heavy practices is that it integrates the breathing into the practice. Because if you're breathing high and tight, you're good to fight. If you're breathing low and slow, you're good to flow. And so when we get the words and the stories and the breath all lined up and stacked, then we can change the internal environment, whether it's processing an unmetabolized emotion, a trauma, a story that hurts, haunts, taunts, annoys. We can use the same framework to be able to pull wins from the past and recognize that we're actually of better quality and character than we think. And we're showing ourselves the evidence by looking at our past stories with the person that we want to be to accomplish the goals that we want in a time that can happen faster than we can expect.
Okay. Now you talk about because I want to talk more about this breathing thing. I find that very interesting, something I've used. But you talk like going back into the words that you talk about. You called it ethereal macronutrient of the mind.
I think you crushed it.
What does that mean, and why does it matter? How can words be the positive thing that pulls you out of these things, and also be the negative thing? It's something that you emphasize, words. So talk to me about that.
Totally. So breaking down what a macronutrient is, because I was a personal trainer for 13 years before doing this, so I have a lot of fitnessy references.
Ooh.
So a macronutrient is a carb, fat, and protein. It's what's in our full food. It's the building blocks of the body, and the quality of the macronutrients is going to influence the quality and the state of the body. When we look at words as the ethereal macronutrients of the mind, The quality of the words that we feed ourselves is going to influence the quality of our thoughts. When we feed ourselves high quality words, we're going to have high quality thoughts. When we feed ourselves crap words, we're going to have crap thoughts. And then everything's going to run downstream: words, stories, breath, then behavior.
Is this what you were like? Is this what an example of that is saying? This is hard and this is difficult. Is that kind of? I know that's very simplistic, but would that be words that kind of mean the same but can have a profound difference?
Totally.
Do you think that these words that we use build walls?
Yes. And they can also build doors. And they can encourage or discourage. And having that and having the awareness to think about our thinking and how, ooh, I don't like that statement. I don't like that I had that thought. It didn't feel in alignment. It felt yucky. It didn't feel like me. And so being able to see that can help counter that. And so,
Yeah, go ahead.
and so how we build walls or how we build doors is, well, going through the process of it, it would be decluttering the mind. So removing as many negative narratives, as many emotional blocks as possible. And that way we have a fresh place. We declutter the mind to make room to throw the party. And the party's for ourselves, because we go into the next part where we're looking at our progress and we're looking at our wins and we're reinforcing the good characteristics while we're also decreasing the evidence that we are not who we say we are. We're increasing who we are, or we're increasing the evidence for who we are.
Kyle, you talk about this cluttered mind. What does a cluttered mind look like?
It looks like indecision. It looks like ambiguity, unclear goals. It looks more like a prison than a source of strength. It looks like projecting the problem outwards and using the uncontrollable external world as validation for why, I'm just going to put it in a reflective sense, why I am not where I'm wanting to be. It's the outside world's fault. It's not my fault. And when we're pointing a finger, there's 3 pointing back.
Right. Now
So that would be a declare mind.
Now you were talking about breath work. Tell me about that, the importance of that, and how because you were talking about story work and you were talking about breath work. Those are the key parts. So tell me more about how breath work really helps you in those journeys and how you incorporate it and put it all together.
I'll start with the breath being the language of the body, where, like I said before, if we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. Breathing low and slow, we're good to flow. So for example, what that would look like in a setting is we're hanging out with a group of friends that are close to us, that we care for. We're just like all solid mates. And then the set and setting, solid, good vibes. And then I notice that my breathing's up in my chest. My heart rate's elevated. There's no stimulus outside of what's going on up here. And it could be something insignificant. And then you take the breath, or you recognize it in your body. You're like, oh, okay, you know what? Looking around, we're good. Our set and setting is solid. So, and down regulate the emotion, because that's the only part of our autonomic nervous system that we can control is our breath. It's the only thing that's automatic that we influence. Our heart does its own thing. Our digestion does its own thing. Our breathing does its own thing. And then we can influence the breathing, which can change the state that we feel. So if we're upregulate, we can downregulate. If we're downregulated, we can upregulate and find a sweet spot, energy neutrality.
Talk to me about, because I listen to this and I'm thinking about maybe a more personal situation, but a lot of people experience this. They get these anxiety attacks. They can't go to the food store because there's too many people, or I can't drive into town because there might be too many cars and things get crazy on this road. And you start building on these anxieties. So tell me how breath work and maybe even story work can go into something that common that happens to so many people.
Totally. So that goes into a part for story work where I integrate the stories and the breathing. So I do both. For example, anxiety is a side effect of something else. Anxiety is an anticipation of future pain. It doesn't exist in the present, in the here and the now. It's something that we've made up and created an artificial experience. If we're in our home scared of leaving it and we're feeling scared, we're the reason we're scared.
Yeah, we mountain.
Totally. And because you listed a bunch of statements, and those would be statements that the person would have. I get them to write each one of those down, and I get them to read it. Where do you feel it in your body? Where are the emotions coming up on a scale of 1 to 10? How intense is it? Then I would most likely provide, let's say, create options of what you can do, or how realistic is that to happen? Do you believe your skill set in driving is not, are you scared of endangering other lives if you drive? Because then that goes to another part where then the problem to solve is not other people. The problem to solve is the skills that person has at that level. Oh, okay. So how can I get better at driving? And then they would build up, because they would build up competence in that ability. As a side effect of competence, they'd feel confidence. That confidence would counter that anxiety because they're in the present and here and the now, rather than thinking of something that doesn't exist, that they're creating.
Now, the breath work, is that something that you use this? I'm having an anxiety attack in the supermarket. I can use these things.
You can use them. As long as you can breathe, you're going to be able to breath work. Unless, don't try underwater.
Now,
Yeah.
tell me one of your even better, what do you tell somebody who feels totally stuck in that? What is the first step you should take?
I would ask questions before I would create a statement. Questions pull, statements push. Because I think that most people have the answers to the problems they're trying to solve, or the project they're trying to work on, because they're seeing information on how to create something. They have more context into the answers than I would. So I'd actually ask, like, where is it that you want to go? So what is your future point, and using that as a reference to look back. If we have the repeat thoughts and we don't have a different pivot, then we're just going to maintain that same algorithm or that routine or a ritual habit.
You got to have some kind of belief shift in this.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what's the biggest difference in someone's life when they get that belief shift?
And the things that I've noticed so far is they've developed much more of a self-reassurance and competence. They see themselves as more competent, because the folks that are coming in have a negative narrative about themselves and they crush it. And so they're doing the things they want to do, and they're like getting all the metrics that they want. However, they're not growing along with it. They're not recognizing their gains. They're just seeing themselves as they were rather than the things that they want to see. So resistance is made up of a couple things. One of those is procrastination. Procrastination could be rooted in when we accomplish projects, they haven't been well received. And so that's why we don't create projects, even though we want to.
Yeah.
However, it's going back and then saying, write the story of the time that you made a piece of work or a project that you were proud of. Because it's less about other people's opinions, it's about our own opinion of ourselves. And that's mindset. Mindset are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, or our opinion of ourselves. We can have a higher opinion or a lesser opinion of ourselves.
Something you probably hear a lot is, I'm just not motivated to do that. Yeah. That word, I'm motivated. How do you encounter that? Because that's something, like you were saying, the other one where maybe they weren't validated when they did. But that's probably the motivated term I just told you about. That is probably the most used phrase in the history of the United States. I'm just not feeling motivated. What do you do? What do you tell them when you deal with that?
My relationship with motivation is simply that motivation is that flaky friend. When they show up, they're awesome. However, when it's time to move from one place to another, they're unlikely to show up. And so I don't see motivation as the cause. I see motivation as the effect. Because when we're creating momentum, we're going to be motivated, and we're going to maintain that motivation as a side effect. So we don't get motivation first, then we do the things. We do the things first, and motivation is the reward.
Nice. Now, you've been doing this, I don't know how long you've been doing this, Kyle, but in the time you've been doing this, is there one experience that really stuck with you that says, you know what, this purpose is awesome and I'm going to keep going?
So, without names, I had a session with a fella, and he was in his late 40s, early 50s. And his story was a father themed story. So there's different themes that people experience. And many times we'll take all those themes, all those stories, and put them under one theme as one story. It's similar to that friend that dates 10 different people, however, they're the exact same person. And so having the specificity with the stories is very important. So I asked, putting the gorilla on the table, the heaviest story, because I like to open it up as an opportunity, what is the one that haunts you the most? And so it was a story when he was 11. So he had this for a couple decades. So we went into it. He types out his story, and it's a nice long one. So we go into the story, talking about his experience. It was not a joyful one, that's for sure.
Right.
And so what we do after the writing, which we take it out of the infinite mind and we put it to a place where it has a beginning and an end. If we keep it up here, it's just going to intermingle with all the other things we got going on rather than being its own separate thing. So writing it down, that's the first thing. And then step two, we just read it out loud. So we read it all out loud. And this is the part where people feel it, where they'll get their breath high and tight. They're trying to hold their breath so that they can read faster. I have to tell them to slow down when they got motor mouth going on. Then I ask them 3 questions. How do you feel? Or what are the feels? What are the feelings you're feeling? Where do you feel it in your body? On a scale of 1 to 10, where's the intensity? Then they give me the numbers. He gave me the number and it was pretty high up there. Then step 3 is to read it 30% slower. So he went through that and he was able to get the breath in. And so he went from this fight flight response where he was high and tight. He was feeling it. And then he was able to calm it down because we were able to break that emotion, that block. And then we were able to slowly go through because then we are in control, not the body. So it's not our fight or flight that's creating the speed. It's slow and slow in the belly. And so he was able to create some more space. And then the numbers, it got less intense. He felt it in some different places, still felt it up in his shoulders. And it was like an 8 or a 9 on this one. So it did go down. It was a 10 before, and it did go down. And then for the last step, we read and breathe. So at every period, insert a breath. So you're reading 30% slower. And when you get to the end of a sentence, big breath in, calm exhale, then read the next line. And this was able to push things through. And at the end of the session, I asked him, I'm like, dude, how do you feel it? And he said, what's crazy? If I still feel like the craziness is there, like it's just chaos, like of the experience. Mm-hmm. And he said that he felt like he was in the middle of that tornado, just like not a part of it. I was like, bro, that is so sick. So it was awesome.
Being able to disconnect from that when everything feels like a tornado, that there is no fixing right there. If you stay stuck in the tornado, the only way to get past it is to get some kind of technique to work your way through it so that you can look at all those other things and they don't look like Everest to you. So where would you like to go with this NLSC thing? What does it look like, your purpose going forward with this?
Oh, man. So one line purpose, there's a couple things. For my one line purpose, it's to help people write a better existence into their lives. They can write a better existence, a better life experience. That's the base thing. My own personal one is the persistent pursuit of self-betterment, to be a positive contribution to the human race and to be a sovereign savage servant. Then what I'm doing right now with the practice is I developed a program that's specifically for fellas because I believe that there's not that much support for fellas when it comes to mindset and practical effort. Because when we look at a lot of psych practices, they're more feminine than masculine overall. And when fellows participate in the practice rather than just ideate and converse to talking heads, when we're actually doing the things, when we're getting our hands dirty and involved, then we make changes. And so that's called the Supra being blueprint. And it's pretty sick.
That sounds cool, but men never go through anything, so we don't need
Yeah.
Dude, we're good. That's probably the most common. I'm good. Not so much. I could talk to you all day, my friend, but I'm wrapping up here. But I definitely would like for you to tell the audience how they can get a hold of you. I did scroll down your website, but in my show, my guest always has the last word. So I'm going to shut up and let you get to it.
For website, clarityconsultant.ca, you get to see quite a bit of information on my practice there. And then if you want to have a conversation, my fastest response time is Instagram, and the account handle is at DapperDudeKyle, DABERDUDEKYLE.
Nice. Thank you again so much for coming on the show, my friend. Thank you.